There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all argument, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Good evening, my name is Hugh. I'm an alcoholic. I like to start off these little sermons with that quotation out of the later editions of this book for one fundamental reason. I have become convinced over the years that it is that contempt prior to investigation that caused us to give out a damn sight more 30-day chips in Alcoholics Anonymous. We do one-year birthday cakes. Contempt prior to investigation. If you're not familiar with what contempt is, I'll tell you what it was for me. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I believed that anyone that thought I was going to pattern my life after something thought up by a shyster New York stockbroker and a butt doctor from Ohio had another thing coming. So you can see how wrong we can be. I would like to take a moment or two out and say a few things before I start talking. I would like to thank Ann, of course, for inviting us up here. She does this fairly regularly for some reason I don't yet understand, but I'm not going to object to it. And I would like to welcome you newcomers, those of you who identified yourself and those of you who did not, and tell you, if no one has, that you're now a part of a fellowship that has astounded science for a great many years. This is the largest group of people anywhere in the world who have found a way to go from adolescence to senility without ever bothering to pass through maturity. So welcome. And if some of you are having a slight problem quitting drinking, I would like to caution you and remind you also that quitting drinking is somewhat like making love to a gorilla. And you are not through until a gorilla is through. But I am fairly sure that if you will take a few dollars and buy yourself one of the late editions of this book, find someone who can translate it for you, and do your damnedest, that you too will find a way to stay sober. It's really not all that difficult. And it just means you've got to change every damn thing you ever believed was right, is all. It's rather simple. I would also like to congratulate the young lady who took her cake here tonight for 4 years. Them cakes are roughly mentioned in this book, not directly, but roughly. In that part of the doctor's opinion where it says, we feel that any description of the alcoholic that leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. And what you must understand is we give out cakes in Alcoholics Anonymous for physical sobriety. It must be obvious that we do not give them out for emotional stability. Which fundamentally translates into that you can be nutty as a fruitcake, don't drink, come back next year and I'll give you one more cake with one more cake. And if you don't believe that, go to enough meetings and find out that this does happen. And if you're still not convinced, come down to my neck of the woods some night and go to the Pacific group, and you'll see adequate evidence there to prove you that you are wrong. So we deal with sobriety, not maturity. And this is mentioned in this book very graphically. And that's fundamentally what I talk about. This book happens to be one of the first 5,000 Alcoholics Anonymous books ever printed. It was printed in 1939 by Works Publishing Company, which I'm sure that many of you have heard about and probably some of you have never seen. And it's a remarkable book in one respect. When you pick up one of the new books and look at the dust jacket, you'll see it says it is the basic text for Alcoholics Anonymous, which means that book there is a textbook. This book here is also a textbook, and a remarkable and almost miraculous thing about it is something so simple that most people overlook it. This book is somewhat over 50 years old, and the basic text has not changed appreciably in the last 50 years. One or two words here and there have been changed, but that is all that's been changed. And you know it's the only textbook in existence that can make that statement? Medical books are changed continuously. Engineering textbooks are out of date before they're out of print, but Alcoholics Anonymous has had the same simple program and approach to living for the last 50 years and has worked extremely well, and I think I can show that to you too, because when you read the flyleaf in this book, the descriptive leaf, you know what it says? The story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. You read the new book at the same leaf and it'll say the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Now there's a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous who do not like to hear that word recovered. Yet it is part of the basic AA concept. Today we got a lot of new words, or at least seemingly new words, and people, some of them who have been around here for a while are disturbed by these new words. Why? We've always had new words in AA. In the middle 60s, for instance, we opened the floodgates to a lot of women who were protected drunk, closet drunks, they called them in those days. They looked like closet drunks, too, because they looked a damn sight better than the ones that got here before them. And we heard new words. Words like Librium, Valium, Therapist. These were new words to us then. Oh, we'd heard them occasionally, but now we begin to hear them all the time. We don't like new words. What we did was we threw the words out, kept the women, everything's worked out fine. And we're going to do that with you, too. When you bring these new words in, we're going to throw the words out, keep you, and everything's going to be all fine there, too. And you'll hear a lot of people say they are recovering. From what? From neuroses? Lots of luck. You don't have to recover from neuroses. All you got to do is admit that you have a problem with alcohol, and then when you take a drink, you don't know what the hell is going to happen to you. And after you take 2, you don't give a damn what's going to happen to you. And after you take 3, you're not even interested in what's happened to you or anybody else. I love to drink. And if I could drink, I would drink. I'll tell you that right now. But I can't. And I've admitted that to myself, and it's really the very beginning of it, is to concede fully to your innermost self that you're an alcoholic. That's not hard to do. But what's hard to do is to understand what alcoholism is. Did you ever try to understand it? Did you ever try to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand it? Did you ever try to explain Alcoholics Anonymous to an IRS agent? Lots of luck. I tried it once, never tried again. I don't give a damn whether they understand it or not. I don't know what alcoholism is except a simple explanation of it that's given in this book right here. And alcoholism is really very simple to understand. Alcoholism in the ISM simply is a way to change a noun to a verb. Incidentally, it has no meaning other than that, regardless of what some of my other friends might tell you. Alcoholism simply means when I take one drink, I want another. And left unchecked, this want will become a need so great that in a certain period of time I will no longer be able to not drink, regardless, and there's no power in heaven or hell that could stop it. As it stopped it in my father, who died in an insane asylum in southern Missouri in 1933 of acute and chronic alcoholism, for which at that time there was no known treatment of any kind. And he did exactly what they said in this book. He went through the gates of insanity and death. And far too many people are still going through the gates of insanity or death, even with this method that we have found to stay away from that first drink. Because they never bothered to read this book. It's just that simple. What I found in here is not what you'll find in here. And what you find in here is not what Bill put in here, because Bill never wrote the book to start with. There's one word that's not in this book that a lot of people should hear and understand, and if you understand that one word, you'll understand AA a lot better than most people understood who have been around here for many, many years. That word is backwards. Just everything about Alcoholics Anonymous is backwards to any other thing you've ever studied, heard of, or practiced anywhere in the world. This is the only organization in the world where a high intellect is a character defect. I was in the Marine Corps for a while, and believe me, surrender to win is not a Marine Corps motto. So you'll find out that our whole concept of recovery is totally backwards from any other concept of anything you've ever heard of anywhere. Nowhere else has it. Even the title of this book, oddly enough, is backwards. You know where it came from? Many years ago, after the script had been written, the monolith, they were looking for a title. Had trouble trying to figure out a title. One guy said, let's call it the 100-Man Society. Another guy said, no, you can't do that. We might get a woman in here someday. They said, well, let's call it The Way Out. Sounded like a good idea, so they checked into that one, found out there was 15, 16 other books with that title. They couldn't use that. And then something rather remarkable happened. There was a little old drunk in a meeting hall in New York. Nobody remembers his name, who he was, or whatever happened to him. But he was feeling sorry for himself this one night, and he says, nobody loves us. Nobody hates us. We're just a bunch of anonymous alcoholics. And they remembered what he said, forgot who said it, turned the words around and come up with Alcoholics Anonymous. And finally we had a title to our book, which later became the title of the whole concept, but we didn't know what to call it either. And Bill did not name it, Bob did not name it. You know who named it really? Clarence Snyder really called it AA because he was the first person who was not affiliated in any way with the Oxford groups and didn't even like those religious fanatics. And he started calling his meetings Alcoholics Anonymous because he didn't know what to call them either. So if you come in here and you don't know a lot, that's okay. That's exactly the way it should be, and you're probably well on your road to recovery. Your recovery. Remember that one. It's very important. You might be recovering from some of your foolish things until you get too old to have foolish ideas. It does happen. A lot of people think we who have been here for a while become wise. No, we don't. We become senile. And when you're senile, these other things don't bother you no more. You see a pretty girl, you can't remember why she was so attractive to you. And then you find out that your life begins to smooth out, and those waves are now just gentle ripples. And I know a lot of you people, especially you younger ones, just cannot wait until you've got a whole bunch of those AA birthdays. Well, let me point out something to you might have overlooked. Do you realize for every AA birthday you get, you're going to get a natal birthday to go along with it? If you come in here when you're 35, hang around at the edge of the place for 29 years, you'll be 64. I did, I have, and I am. And while that does beat the alternative, let me point out to you that quite often that's all in the hell it does beat. So take it easy. This book says, trudge the road of happy destiny. Not to happy destiny, incidentally, but of happy destiny. Walk slowly and carefully. When you're walking slow, and you trip, you don't fall quite so easy as if you're running. If you don't believe that, stretch a rope across your room, run across it, trip, and see what happens. And then walk across the same rope, and you'll see it. There's nothing complicated in this whole book. It's the simplest book you'll ever read. In fact, one of the biggest problems is it's so damn simple, you just don't believe it's going to work. You just can't believe it. Now we have you young people coming in here today that's got all kinds of troubles. My God, just being a drunk was good enough for me, but I know for a lot of you young people it's not, so you come in with new words like clean and sober. And there's a lot of people who have been here for a while just get disturbed when you say it. I don't get disturbed when you say that. I took a shower before I left my home this afternoon, and I never had a drink on the way up here. That means I am clean and sober, no matter what you say about it. I've learned to understand these complex statements that you make and apply them to the realities of living. Now, they don't bother me any longer. In fact, I have been asked to be one of the guest speakers at the World Convention of Cocaine Anonymous, and I never had a snort of cocaine in my life or any desire to have one. And I asked the guy, why do you want me? It's because you talk about the book. And they use identically the same program we use. And I'll tell you something else, drunks, you may not understand. You know these Al-Anons use identically the same program we use too. So we have given to anyone who wanted them our 12 steps and our basic concept of those 12 steps. Freely given them. But let me point out something to you that you might have overlooked. There is one thing we have given to no one. That is the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a very simple understanding. We're just a bunch of drunks trying to stay sober, not a bunch of sickies trying to get well. And if you understand that, you'll understand this whole program easier. And then you can enjoy your various weird ideas about various things. Now, I'll give you something else. You hear that newcomers are the lifeblood of the organization. They are. And I'll tell you exactly why you are. I got a whole bunch of weird ideas that I want to try out, and I don't want to try them out on me. So I want you to try them out. If they work for you, then I'll try them. See if they work for me. Tried that once. Damn near got killed, but I'm willing to try it again. So you see, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we do one thing today that we could not have done a few years or a few months or a few weeks ago. We laugh at ourselves. And we have found the benefit of laughter and how it can treat almost anything. And you might think that Alcoholics Anonymous is something particular. It isn't, but the concept of it is. And sometimes it's understanding that makes the understanding of other things more practical. I know you girls will understand this. Why do we want to keep AA as a fellowship of alcoholics? Why is that necessary? Why not? We found a way to solve the drink problem. Why not solve all the other problems of the world? Well, we tried that once, damn near lost the organization. We don't try it again, but I'll tell you why we don't try it. Let's assume that one of you ladies was laying in a hospital bed with a breast removed from cancer. And you were frightened, concerned, and scared shitless. Would you want a drunk to come in there and tell you how much you enjoyed being sober? Or would you rather have another woman come in there and talk to you who had had a breast removed 5 or 6 years ago and show you how contented and how happy she is with life and how she has been able to live with that one thing that you have dreaded so much? You know, they're doing this now quite often. And the American Psychiatric Association, in one of their latest papers, made one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever heard. They said, we don't understand why. These women seem to recover more easily than others, but they do, and we suggest it for all cancer patients. You would think that even with all their synthetic knowledge, they should have brains enough to know that. We've known it for 54 years, almost 55. That one person who has been there can help another one who is there more than anyone else can, and that's the only reason for keeping Alcoholics Anonymous Alcoholics Anonymous. We deal with one fundamental trouble in this world. It must be obvious to any of you that Alcoholics Anonymous is not a panacea. It certainly does not grow hair, not at all. And the basic program of Alcoholics Anonymous is right here. Not in one thing I say, but in these books called Alcoholics Anonymous. So buy yourself a book, read it, and find somebody to translate it for you. And I didn't say interpret it. I said translate it into a language you can understand. You will find out that your life will change measurably. Does that mean you'll never have any problems? No, of course not. But it does mean that you'll have an additional power to live with those problems. I have never found a power yet that prevents those problems from happening. It rains on the just and the unjust, it says in the Bible, and if all of us walk out of here tonight, the best and the worst member will both be getting wet in the rain. But we don't have immunity from life's problems, the power to live with those problems without picking up that drink that we once thought was so essential. And that's what Silkworth said about us. You know what he said about us now? He said men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And while its effect is injurious, it is so elusive that we soon cannot differentiate between the true and the false, and we become convinced that our alcoholic life is the only normal one. If you're convinced that your way of life, whether you're drunk or not, is the only normal way of life, and you Al-Anons better listen to this, you'll find out that no matter what goes wrong, it's never your fault. It's his fault, or her fault, or their fault, but it's never yours. After all, you're living the way life should normally be lived, and they are obviously out of step. And you'll hear this many, many times in Alcoholics Anonymous, both from drunks and non-drunks alike. And then Silkworth said something that's very important for each of us to understand. Because he said we're restless, irritable, and discontented unless we can again experience that sense of ease and comfort that comes at once from taking a few drinks. Drinks which we see others taking with impunity. It does not bother them at all. But once we succumb to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomena of craving develops, and we pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolve never to drink again, and this will happen over and over and over. And unless we can experience some kind of a complete psychic change, there is very little hope for our recovery. And fundamentally, that is what alcoholism is. And it's no more than that, and it's no less than that. And the next paragraph in the doctor's opinion offers some hope for everyone. But because I had to buy this book and read them, if you want to find out what that hope is, you can buy your own book and read it, because I ain't going to tell you what it is. But then Silkworth did say something that's rather important, because he described 5 types of people that he had found became alcoholics. The psychotic, the neurotic, the idiotic, the manic depressive, and the so-called normal drinker. So it has absolutely nothing to do with your personality. It alters it. But the personality you had did not cause it. The only known cause of alcoholism, oddly enough, is alcohol. Absolutely nothing else causes alcoholism. Women don't cause alcoholism. You ever drink a woman? Can't be done. Bourbon will cause alcoholism. Gin, wine, beer, any of these things will cause it. And it's the only known cause of alcoholism is alcohol. That's why ism changes the noun alcohol into the verb that describes the affliction caused by it. And I say affliction because I'm still not convinced it's a disease in the strict sense of the word, because there's one thing I've never been able to translate this book into, and that is medical terminology. And I've seen a lot of people try, fumble it, fail it, and end up bewildered because they couldn't translate it into something some idiot, some well-informed person in a hospital told them. Insanity is used in this book. You ever try to translate that into terms that might be well known to medical people? What they're talking about in this book is the insanity that precedes the first drink. When you know what's going to happen, when you're convinced what's going to happen, and you still do it. That's crazy. But it has nothing to do with clinical insanity. It has nothing to do with medical treatment. It has nothing to do with anything. And when you go to a medical program, they'll charge you from $10,000 to $20,000 to teach you what we could teach you for $10. Because when you come out of there, you'll be sober, and you'll know a little bit about some of the steps, at least as some people interpret them. We can do that for you for $10. It's very simple to learn about the first 3 steps in AA, cost you no more than $10. Take about $4.50 or $5, whatever the hell they're getting for this book now, and buy yourself a book. Then take the rest of your money and buy the biggest box of Excelax you can find, and eat the whole box. And you will learn immediately what it is to be powerless. You will also begin to understand what it is to have an unmanageable life. You will learn all about a power greater than yourself. And you will be willing to turn your will and your life over to anything or anyone that will just relieve you of the foolishness of doing what it was suggested you do here tonight. So you'll learn all you need to learn about those steps. They're really not difficult, except that this whole book is written about nothing else but the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I say the whole book. I'm talking about the basic text, not the stories. They're written about people's troubles with them and troubles with alcohol. But when you read chapters 2 through 7 in this book, you'll be reading only about the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, no more and no less. And when you read chapters 2 and 3, you'll be reading only about step 1. But did you ever read that step? Really read it? It says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. You know how many people put an and in there somewhere? There's no and in there at all. Your life was unmanageable because your damn drinking kept you from taking care of the things you should have taken care of, like going to the bathroom when you had to go. Little things, not important things, but little things. And it is the only step that we proceed. We does not come first in any other step. So there's really only one step in Alcoholics Anonymous. Starts out with we and ends with the last word in step 12. Affairs. If you understand that, you'll understand that they cut it up in little pieces so you could chew it up easier. But fundamentally, it's only one step. And step 12 is not really a step, the way most people work it anyway. I didn't like that word powerless when I heard it. When I got into AA, I'd been given one of the biggest medals I can hang around a soldier's neck in this country. I had made and spent $963,000, and there's no way you was going to tell me I was powerless over anything or anyone. People were a commodity. You bought and sold them like anything else. The fact that I was sleeping in a cardboard box at the time was incidental. It had nothing to do with the truth whatsoever. When you read chapter 4, we agnostics, you'll be reading only about step 2. One step, one chapter. We agnostics. When you read the first paragraph in that, you'll find it's a very important paragraph to understand because it says in the preceding chapters you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. And they're not talking about the alcoholic now and the Al-Anon, I used to say, until I found out some of them Al-Anons drank more than I ever did. Oh, they're talking about the alcoholic and the heavy drinker and what's the difference between them. And in chapter 2 you find out what the difference is. The heavy drinker, given sufficient reason, can quit. Problems with job, health, money, family. These are all good enough reasons for him to quit. Wife, that's good reason. Suppose your wife tells you, you don't quit drinking, I'm leaving. What do you tell her? Don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out, lady. No, these were not sufficient reasons for us. But for the heavy drinker, they are. But not for the alcoholic. And then it lists the only 2 symptoms that are listed anywhere in this book for alcoholism, and oddly enough, there are only 2. It says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when you're drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If this be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Now, if that's true, would you tell me why so many people now waste so much of their time on this planet trying to become emotionally stable and have so little to do with a spiritual way of life? And I said spiritual now, not religious. And there is one hell of a difference in those things. But I'd like to tell you something else. I was born and raised in southern Missouri in the Baptist Bible Belt, so I want to get absolutely clear with each and every one of you that I was neither an atheist nor an agnostic when I come into Alcoholics Anonymous. I believed in God and Jesus Christ then, and I still do. That has not changed one damn little bit. And I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, mentioning God or Christ from podiums like that to people like these is going to drive some of them drunks out of here. It might, but booze will drive you back, so we're going to break even. Now, if you don't want to hear about God, a power greater than yourself, a higher power, don't bother to read this book. You'll find it's mentioned some 228 different times. If you don't want to read about Christ or the devil, then don't read page 11 because both of them are mentioned on that one page in these later editions of this book. Both of them on that one page. Why is it that you can talk about King Puti, Confucius, Laotez, Mohammed, Buddha, anybody else, nobody gets upset? You mention Christ, half the people's hair comes right straight up. Why is it? Is it because Christ was the only person who allegedly could turn water into wine and you still resent it? Is it just that simple? On page 52 in the later editions of this book, you'll find 8 results of being either an atheist, an agnostic, or an egoist. I didn't say egotist, even though a lot of people say, well, in your case, that too would have applied. I guess they're right about that. What I said was egoist. You know what an egoist is? An egoist is a person who, while he knows all about God, he believes only in himself. And if you believe only in yourself, you will think only of yourself. And it isn't long before you'll live your life as if you was in a room full of mirrors. And every human emotion that goes out bounces right back. And if you feel any kind of pity, it will always be self-pity. And then you'll know great and deep frustrations trying to get the rest of us to feel as sorry for you as you feel for yourself, and we're just too callously indifferent to do it. You'll find out that you have only a small amount of pity to be used wise and well for others, not for yourself. Now, I said there were 8 results on page 52 in those books. I also said I had to buy this book, and I'm also going to say I'm not going to tell you what they are. If you want to know what they are, you can read them yourself. I'll tell you what 2 of them are. One of them says we could not control our emotional natures. One of them says we were having trouble in our personal relationships. You know where else relationships is graphically mentioned in these books? In chapter 11, where it says, see to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. Now tell me, fellas, is it possible most of the relationships we got ourselves involved in went to hell so quickly because we went into them with what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? And we never even existed. We never had a chance. I think it's something every one of us should look at from time to time, don't you? And I hear a lot of people say, in fact, I heard it this evening early. I want self-confidence, self-worth, self-esteem. All these words sound good, don't they? Hyphenated self. Would you like a little self-righteousness to go along with it? Be careful of those self-hyphenated words, because every one of them is in direct defiance of what you'll read in this book. You know what the book says about self? It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. It doesn't say one word about self-improvement. We, every one of them, tried to change our way of life when we were drinking. Did you ever walk into a bar and say, give me a double shot tonight, I'm going to be me? No. You're going to be an airplane pilot, a ship captain. In my neck of the woods, a casting director was very popular. But did you ever just try to be yourself? And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is going to show you, is how to be yourself. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't know who I am. Well, you sure as hell know who you ain't. And that's all you got to know is stop doing what you've been doing, and the results in your life will totally change, and you don't have to change a damn thing. Just stop doing what you've been doing all the time, and it will change. You'll read in chapter 5. You know how many people in AA try to grasp honesty? Oh, they struggle for honesty and live for it and fight for it. Can't get it. Because they never read a book. You know what it says in the book? Grasp and develop a manner of living that demands rigorous honesty. Did that ever occur to you then? It's the way you live, not the way you talk. That you cannot be honest if you're not being you. How can you be honest if you're phony? How could it possibly be if you're not being yourself? And once you are being yourself, what difference does it make? You'll find out you got just as many friends and just as many enemies as you ever had. You're different. The friends are different. The enemies are different. But you got just as many of them, because I don't care who you are or what you're like, not everybody's going to like you. You know how I know that? From the life of Christ. If everybody liked him, they wouldn't have crucified him. And you know how many people in AA try to be better than Christ, get everybody to like him? You ever try to get everybody to like him? Did you ever try to get somebody to like you don't like? That's a real kicker. And if you think it's easy, try it someday. Just pick out the guy you can't stand the most. I want to make him like me. And watch your frustrations and disappointments increase with every passing day that you're trying to do and be something you could never do or be. Many of us never achieve greatness We're just people. Little known, little heard of, unsung. In 1949, I became a journeyman wireman. Last year, I retired as a journeyman wireman. It's the highest I ever got, and I got there in 1949. Just spent the next 40 years enjoying it. And that's what life's all about, isn't it? And I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoy this. I'm retired now, and I like that. I never liked responsibility. I don't care what the rest of you idiots say. I don't like it. The only part of working I ever kept was a coffee break. I have one of those 9:30 every morning. Go to the coffee shop, get a donut, and sit there and read the newspaper and thumb my nose at all those people going by and going to work. But I want you to go. I still want to grow my Social Security, so keep working. But I kind of like it this way. I enjoy it. I get up in the morning and do what Bev wants me to do and do what she wants me to do all day and go to bed. Sometimes I think about going back to work just to get out of going to work, but what the hell? I enjoy it. And isn't that what life's all about? Just enjoy being alive. You know how many people are locked into what they ain't got and forget to look at what they is got? And how much miserable they spend their lives in so much misery? And life is so short. Why waste it? Just being miserable about something you haven't got that would make you no happier than what you have got. Because if you got everything you wanted in 2 weeks, you'd be right where you are right now. And if you had all the money in the world in a month, you'd kill yourself, as many have, when you found out there's nothing left to want for it and there's no hope left because you've got everything now. My God, the greatest part of hope is not having everything you hoped for. And the greatest part of being 64 years old is not getting everything you prayed for at 24. And I've had a lot of people tell me, well, you see, when I retired, something happened that was rather unique. If anybody asked me when I went to work after coming into AA, I'd have said in June 1960. I got my work record. You know when I went to work? August 1959. And almost one whole year, I have no memory of whatsoever. I don't know what happened. I looked at the work record. They got the names down there. I get paid for it every month, so I'm not really curious about it. And I get a lot of these younger people say, well, are you going to inventory it? No, I'm not. Did you ever look at people who are constantly taking inventories or are constantly miserable? I have found the secret of true happiness is good health and a bad memory. And if you keep it like that, you spend a lot of time being happy. You got nothing to be miserable about it. Of course, I must admit I forget a lot of speaking dates. I was supposed to be 3 different places tonight, and I picked the most logical one, and here I am. I didn't say that sobriety makes you perfect. Age sure as hell doesn't. It just makes you aware of the imperfection and how much foolishness you wasted in your life by trying to correct them and forgetting what Alcoholics Anonymous says to you about abandoning yourself to God as you understand God. You read steps 6 and 7 here, you'll find out you can't do nothing about you. You just develop a couple of techniques, being humble enough to ask God to take them away and be ready for all of them to go. And I still got one I'll hang on to till next year, and maybe I'll talk to him about that one. I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to be the loneliest man in the country no more. Now, what about chapter 5? How to work. Did you ever ask an old-timer how it works, and he says, trust God and clean house? You want to know where he got that? Out of chapter 7, working with others. Where it says, burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he too can get well, regardless of anyone. The only condition being that he trust in God and clean house. Now, before I get into the significance of that in chapter 5, there's something else I'd like to point out to you. That's a small portion of chapter 5 you heard Helen read here tonight. Do you know you hear that small portion of chapter 5 read all over the country now, all over the world, every place I've been, Canada, Mexico, every one of the states I've been in, they read that small portion of chapter 5. They don't know why they're reading it, but they're reading it. We have sent enough missionaries out among the heathens to convince them our way is the best way. But let me tell you what is wrong with hearing something read in every meeting. You don't pay one bit of attention to what's being read. I've heard people say you can work this program any way you want to. Maybe you can. You know what the book says? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, and there is no S on path, only one path. It says there are 2 kinds of people ain't going to make it. Those who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Now there they're talking about the smart ass and the wet brain. So the next time one of you have a little drinky poo, or some of you fire off some of them pocket rockets you carry around with you, and you're sitting out here on one of these street corners trying to figure out which one you're on, I want to tell you right now, a wet brain cannot think. You'll know which one you are, I just told you. You ever hear somebody say, if you want what we have, you know that's the philosophy of a thief, and it is not a part of the AA concept, and it's not in this book. You know what the book does say? If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. That's one statement. The whole thing makes sense. Part of it don't. Have you made that decision? Do you want it? Are you willing to go to any length to get it? If not, you're not going to get it. What you will get is a whole bunch of little technicolored buttons they pass out in some of these meetings. You might even get a cake or two with a candle on it, but you know what you will not get? Peace of mind, contentment, hope. Oh, you'll know they're there. You'll see them in others. But they'll always be slightly beyond your grasp, and you'll go slowly mad trying to get what they have got. And it will always be just elusive enough that you'll never see it in yourself because you never made the decision. You weren't willing to go to any length, and you never understood what this was all about because you never read it. You just depended on people like me to tell it to you, and how you know I'm telling you the truth if you ain't read it? Because you see, when I say Bill didn't write this book, he didn't. What he wrote was the monolith, the basic manuscript. Did you ever read the manuscript of this book? It's totally different than this book because of something that is rather unique in this backwards concept of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know where we got our spiritual concept? From a psychiatrist, from Carl Jung. When he was trying to treat a drunk called Roland, and he found out he couldn't treat him successfully because Roland got sober, went over back to New York. A month later he was drunk, back in Austria. Then what went wrong? Roland told him what went wrong. He said, you're an alcoholic, and your type of alcoholic has no chance. He said, there's nothing I can do. He said, there's absolutely no way that you can hope to stay sober unless you commit yourself to an asylum or hire a bodyguard to watch your every move. He said, you will not be able to stay sober. This scared the living hell out of Roland. And he said, no way? You mean there's absolutely no way it can be done? He said, well, I've seen it occasionally where a drunk of your type was able to have some kind of a complete, severe personality change, some kind of a total displacement of emotion, seemingly a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, some kind of a spiritual thing. But he said, I tried to do that with you and it hasn't worked. Roland said, well, I'm a church member. I have a religious belief, a good one. And he said, I know you do, Roland, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Well, Roland went back to New York, joined the Oxford groups, met Evie. Evie talked to Bill, his friend. Bill got into the Oxford groups, and that was the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous, the beginning. And our spiritual concept was given to us by a psychiatrist. Talk about backwards. Today they tell you in their manual that if you believe you have had a spiritual experience, you are no doubt suffering from a grave emotional disorder that requires some kind of hospital treatment, preferably commitment. They have refuted their own words. Now I'll tell you something even more remarkable. When the basic manuscript was submitted to a minister, a well-known minister in New York, he took out every rigid reference to God. Said, Bill, they won't buy it that way. Our religious approach has never worked with you drunks, and you know that better than anyone. So they don't say humbly on our knees anymore. So Bill did not write this book, and this book does not say he did. What it says is we have concluded to publish an anonymous volume, which we hope will help everyone better understand the alcoholic. Simple statement. And yet so many people overlook it for so long. And many people really believe you've got to smash the ego. You want your ego smashed? I'll tell you how to do it. 1, get into San Quentin. That'll do it. 2, get in the Marine Corps. That damn well will do it. This book does not say one word about smashing the ego. You know what it does say? The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. And you'll find that you will never be like other people. So if you felt lonely, lost, if you felt different than, it's because you was different than. It's just that simple. And it would have made no difference now whether your parents were happy or sad, whether they were divorced or married, whether they were rich or poor. Because we people here with all of those characters in their background, and all of them had that same statement to make. I felt different somehow. You felt different. because you're different. And you'll never feel like them. And yet they are as right as we are. And if you understand that, you'll understand more about yourself than most people understand sometime after 10 or 15 years. That they are different somehow. So it makes no difference now what your background was. Makes no difference what your personality was. Alcoholism seems to attract and afflict 1 out of every 10 people who drink it. And to tell you the truth, my brother deserved it more than I did. But he didn't get it and I did. So I guess I deserved it more than he did in God's eyes. And that's all I have to know about God, is that I ain't. And that took a long time for a guy like me to understand. Now let me point out something else to you. Alcoholics Anonymous has 12 steps. Christ had 12 disciples. In the book, it says, at some of these we balked. One of Christ's disciples was Judas. One of these steps is Judas. You know which one it is? Oh, it makes no difference what the number is. It's the one step you really believe. That don't apply to me. I don't have to do that. That's the Judas step. That's the one that'll throw you right back where you came from. Each one of these steps apply to each one of us in a slightly unique way. We're not all the same, but they do apply. And if you understand that, you'll understand a lot about AA. And it's not that hard to understand. So far, we haven't really said anything that was complex. It's just too simple. That's the trouble with it. It's just too simple. Some years ago, we got a little, well, I guess you could say we had a little fun with psycho-cybernetics. So you people that are new have not even experienced some of the romantic thrills of Alcoholics Anonymous yet. My God, that was romantic. But there was one statement in that book that I did find very interesting. A woman had had a facial change, plastic surgery. And when a doctor was admiring it, she made a statement that was most important. She said, but doctor, I don't feel any different. So we can't do plastic surgery on the feelings. Now we have to depend on this power greater than ourselves. God does that. And God will do for us what we could never have done for ourselves, and we see it time after time. And it's mentioned in chapter 4. Do you realize in chapter 4 there's one of the most poetic verses in all of AA? It says, for the faith in a power greater than oneself, and the miraculous demonstration of that power in human life, are facts as old as man himself. So we really have nothing new to offer either, do we? And yet it is that one thing that causes us to go to these meetings and sense something that for years I couldn't figure out what it was I was sensing. But have you ever noticed a newcomer when they come into AA, they're mean, angry, violent, every third word's a swear word? And yet watch them a year later when they take that cake. And you've seen that miraculous demonstration of that power in human life, and you see it daily. Every meeting you go to where a cake is given out, you see it time after countless time after countless time. There are only 2 fundamental reasons to go to AA meetings. The first one, and I guess one of the most important, is to find out what happens to people who don't go to meetings. And that miraculous demonstration and the witness of it. And finally you get to the point where you're like the centurion that went out to observe Christ. You get to a point where you say, I cannot deny what my eyes have seen. And you see this happen over and over and over and over. I've been a witness to it for a great many years, and I have never ceased to be in awe of it. And I know that every one of you that's new that comes in here with a big chip on your shoulder and incapable of thinking about anyone but yourself, I know exactly what's going to happen to you within a year or two. And it'll be something that's remarkable. It must be obvious that not every man can be handsome. Not every woman can be pretty. But has it ever occurred to you that every damn one of us can be beautiful? And all we have to do is start being ourselves. I run across this word honesty in that part of chapter 5. A lot of people are deluded by that statement. It's probably one of the biggest problem statements in AA, or it was for a good many years, and I think it still is. Where it says there are many who are gravely emotionally, mentally ill, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. You know how many people with severe emotional or mental disorders have went stark raving mad because they believed that AA was a panacea and never seeked out medical help where it could work? You know how many people have been led down a primrose path by that statement, believing all I got to do is be honest and that things will change? That's not what it means at all. What it merely means is you can be nutty as a fruitcake. If you can understand that alcohol is a problem to you and don't drink, we can help. That's all in the hell it's saying. But I couldn't understand the word honesty. Now, I've been in business out here for 10 years, so I understood the word dishonesty very well. But honesty, I couldn't quite comprehend it. And I had a sponsor that was rather unique. The gentleman never in his life ever answered a question directly for anyone. When you'd ask him a question, he'd ask you one. When you answered his, you knew the answer to yours, and he never done any work at all that way. And I watched him do it for years. And I went up to him one day and asked, what about this word honesty in AA? How does it fit? How does it work? He said, well, it's really not very difficult, young fellow. He said, let's assume that there was a man and a woman who were both married to someone else, and they get together one day, decide to go to a motel. They go up to the desk clerk to register, and the clerk looks at them, and he says, are you married? And they say, yes, we are. He gives them a key. They go inside. He said, now you tell me honesty would apply to that. Well, that was a long time ago, and in those years I hadn't been in that position too recently, and it didn't sound like such a bad idea to me, but it also seemed obvious what the problem was. I said, well, yeah, if they was honesty, he said, yeah, we're married, but not to each other. He said, no, that's not it. He said, that would have been the truth, though, wouldn't it? And it would have eliminated the sin of omission. But it has absolutely nothing to do with honesty. For 3 solid months, I tried to puzzle that damn thing out. 3 months later, I was no closer to the solution than I was the day he posed the problem, and I knew where he was going to be at this particular time. And I went there to meet him, planning on killing him if he didn't give me the answer to the damn question. And I said, what about the man and the woman and the honesty bit? How does it apply? He said, young man, do you mean to tell me you have not figured that out yet? I said, no, I have not. He said, young man, you amaze me. He said, if they'd have been honest, they would not have been there. And that had never occurred to me. But something did begin to occur to me right after that. Honesty is action. Action, they say, is the magic word in AA. Honesty deals with integrity. Truth deals with facts. You can tell the truth and not be honest. And how many times have every one of us been led down a primrose path because somebody told us the truth and we confused it with honesty? And we're deluded into believing something was true that was not true. If someone tells you they're a thief, they're not being honest, they're just being truthful. And if you invite them home with you and they steal all you got, don't go to an AA meeting complaining about them. Thieves steal. That's the purpose of being a thief. If you were honest, you would take nothing that is not yours to take. No man's gold, no man's wife, nothing. If it is not mine, I don't want it. And from that I begin to understand why every prayer I'd ever made was answered. God does not need to speak our languages. He may well understand them far better than any of us, but he does not need to. Because when we look at our own actions, we see that we have always gotten from life what we have given to life. I've gotten exactly what I have deserved. The trouble was I didn't get all of it. And that bothered the hell out of me. And God knew it would bother the hell out of me. He'd say, don't give him all of it. Let the little jerk sit down there and worry. He's worried us enough. We're going to worry him for a while. But if you ever look, your actions are your prayers. Oh, God likes to have us ask. And he likes to have us say thank you. And he likes to have us be at peace with one another. I read a book that described that very well. The book that said, its title is All I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And that's all any of us ever needed to know, is what we learned in kindergarten. Be kind to one another. Be nice. Put your things away. Don't fight. Flush. My God. We know these things. We haven't done these things. And there's been the trouble, is we relied on our intellect and forgot about our actions. And I want exactly what I deserve. I will get it, whether I want it or not. But knowing that has kept me on a line of straightness I could have never kept on otherwise. Understanding that I will get from life what I've given to life. And I have no complaints if I have given nothing and gotten nothing. But isn't that the golden rule? Isn't that what it really says? To do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Now I'm going to tell you where we make a lot of mistakes. We're going to make one at 10 o'clock tonight, or 9:30 when the meeting's over. We're going to hold hands and ask God to punish us. We're going to say the Lord's Prayer. You know what it says in here? It says, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. You realize what that's really saying? We're standing there thinking, just wait till I get my hands on old Joe. I'm going to shaft that SOB. And we're asking God to do to us what we're going to do to him. And then we complain about our circumstances in life. Now I'll tell you about the miracle of forgiveness. Do you realize when you forgive anyone who has harmed you and ask God to forgive them, they are not forgiven, but you are. You do not have, and I do not have, the power to forgive anyone anything. But if I am willing to forgive you for the harm you have done to me, I am forgiven, you ain't. And if you've got a personality like mine, you'll just delight in that little bit of knowledge. And you'll find yourself forgiving each and every one of them for everything they've ever done or thought of doing. And go about your business with a smile on your face, knowing you're off the hook, and they ain't. Until they do what you have done. But isn't it what Christ also said? When you do what I have done, you can do what I have done. And haven't we cleansed the leper, raised the dead, cured the sick, calmed the raging waters? Have you ever walked into one of your baby's house when him and his wife were freely discussing various principles of longevity and calmed them down? You see this all the time in Al-Anon. They have a miraculous gift for this ability to quiet those raging waters, and yet most of them don't even realize that all they're doing is what Christ said they could do when they do what he did. Oh, we don't do it in exactly the same way, do we? But isn't the same effect? Isn't it as important? Right after the ABCs, and I got to get out along here, but right after the ABCs where we stop reading, a remarkable thing does happen in all of these books. It says, being convinced we were at step 3, and step 3 is italicized. A little further over in that same chapter, it says this is step 4. Step 4 is also italicized. 2 steps in that one chapter, 3 and 4. Trust God, clean house. It took me 20 years and one drunk to figure that out. So simple that we overlook it. Steps 3 and 4. Now, when you get to step 4, you'll find out there are 2 kinds of people in AA. Those you cannot make take a 4th step, and those you cannot keep from taking a 4th step. I come from the first kind. I'd ask a guy once, did you take the 5th step? He said, when the statute of limitations run out. I figure that's a good idea. If you don't take the 4th, you don't take the 5th, right? And incidentally, that is the 5th step, not the 5th Amendment. I'd like to point that one out, too. This adversary of mine walked up to me one day and he said, kid, you've been freeloading enough. It's long enough. It's time you took an inventory. What the hell? I took an inventory. Wrote out in longhand, seen the syntax was right, punctuated it properly, edited somewhat for readability, put a loose leaf notebook, added addendum with this resentment list they talk about in here, and handed it to him. He took one look at it. He said, what's this, a movie script? I said, no, sir, that's my inventory. He thumbed through it. He said, this is not your inventory. He said, it's a movie script. Hell, I'm an actor, kid. I know a script when I see one. This one won't play, and he gave it back to me. I said, that is not a movie script. That is my inventory. He said, it is not. I said, it is. He said, no, it ain't. He said, what you've done, my young friend, is you've itemized your behavioral patterns. And I have no doubt that you've edited it so damn well that neither you nor I will ever know how you was ever wrong about anything. With that, he reached in his coat pocket, took out a small notebook, handed it to me. One sheet said, take your inventory on this. I looked at it. I said, I can't. He said, you can? I said, no, I can't. It's too small. He said, no, it ain't. He said, tell me, my young friend, have you ever knowingly taken anything that did not belong to you? I said, of course I have. You know that. He said, then write down thief. He said, have you ever told a little story you knew did not match the facts in the case? I said, of course I have. You know that too. He said, then write down liar. Now, I don't know about you, but I did not like the way this inventory was starting to turn out. He said, you ever played around with the girls when you was married to somebody else? I said, yeah, you know that too. He said, then write down cheat. He started to walk off, and he said, oh, incidentally, at the top of that page, write down atheist. I said, I told you I was a Baptist. He said, what's the difference? Now, you know, for a long time that bothered me. I got rather angry about that statement, but as I thought about it, I began to understand something that I'd overlooked for many, many years. You know that quite often a deep-seated religious conviction is a tremendous obstacle to a spiritual concept. It shouldn't be, and yet it is. How many times have you heard someone say, if you're not a good Baptist, what the hell good are you? If you're not a good Catholic, you're good for nothing anyway. And the greatest of all spiritual concepts cannot apply where that does. And the greatest of all spiritual concepts is only 2 words long. Our Father. Our Father cannot apply where bigotry exists. It cannot apply. But you'll find out that when our Father does apply, there is no longer blacks or whites, men and women, Yankees and Chicanos. just people, trouble, and we can help them, and we should, without any question whatsoever, without like or dislike, without personalities becoming involved in any way. Some are dangerous, I'll tell you that right now. So AA says to go as a group. The primary purpose of any group is to carry its message to the alcoholic that still suffers, and it tells you that any two or more who are associated for the purpose of sobriety with no outside interest may consider themselves an AA group. So it's telling you how to make your 12-step call. If two is not enough, go as a mob. But go. That's what's important. Go. Because they also tell us that nothing gives us so much immunity against the next drink as our working with others. As our working with others. Not complaining about our circumstances, but helping others with theirs. So let's do what it tells us to do. And read this book. It's very important. Very essential. And it's not important what was put in it. What is important is what you get from it and how you apply that to your daily living. Because you see, as my friend, my sponsor, Blake, had explained to me, he said, what you did, my friend, was you took an inventory, but you left out the word moral. You never took a moral inventory. And by understanding what he meant for that, I could understand how morals applied. A thief lives by certain codes of ethics, certain morals. A liar does. A cheat does. An honest man does, too. The morals are different. But we all live by morals, so it's not looking at good morals or bad morals or taking a bad inventory or a good inventory. It's saying these are the things I was. And by going to step 5, I could talk to somebody about just something so simple as being a thief and seeing how that one thing affected my whole life. All those others wouldn't even have to have been there. Because you see, the great curse of a thief is not that no one trusts him, but that he can trust no one. And if you understand loneliness, you understand I just described it, because that applies to a liar too, and to a cheat. And you'll find many people in AA who are extremely jealous of this new girlfriend they just got, not because of what she is doing, but because of what they are thinking. And you find out how jealousy affects us from the events that have happened to us, usually as we inflicted our will on others to their detriment, and then to our own. You begin to understand that this whole concept is so simple that it's so easy to work. And the only trouble with it is that you've got to change everything you've ever thought of ever doing into a way you never knew, and believe in something you can never see, you really experience, or describe. And when you try to describe it, it becomes elusive. Oh, I know there's a God, but I can't describe it. I don't know what it looks like. I don't even know if it's an it. You know what I heard Beverly say one night? She said, remember, honey, it's God as we understand her. And you know, she could be right. It would explain a lot of things that I've had trouble understanding. But I recognize it as a power greater than myself. And right there is where most people fail, Alcoholics Anonymous. In step 2, when they try to become a power greater than themselves, and after 10 or 15 years fail miserably and end up drunk again, always believing, I know what's right. I know what's best. No, I don't. Now, funny part of it is, I know what's best for you. I don't know what's best for me. But you know what's best for me, and you don't know what's best for you. And if that ain't backwards, I don't know what is. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for doing something for me that I could have never done for myself. You loved me when I could not love myself. And you have taught me how to love you. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. Thank you.